One thing I can tell you that I've experienced, no matter the demographic of who I've worked with, we love the outdoors and we love to. Is South African residential design changing? This is a question we've been asked. And when I thought about this, we don't really like to look at trends, but we can definitely say that we are seeing a shift in what the South African public wants within residential design. So the South African consumer has more and more exposure to international design through social media, the internet, but I'd say a lot of it is through social media. On top of that, COVID really made people question how they live. I think it really made them think about the quality of their space. And the quality of space has really become a priority to people. And there's science that backs that, because the quality of the environment that we live in affects us. It affects how we see the world, how we enter the world, how we rest. I think there's enough science. So we don't want to really talk about that. But where we've seen a shift is from a design perspective, we've seen a real shift towards more bespoke homes. So people don't want necessarily mass-produced things that everybody else has. And we've seen this same shift within homes, where sometimes it is that the entire house, people are looking at what's happening internationally, people are very environmentally conscious, and really might want something unique that speaks to their values and who they are. So we recently did a project in a suburb of Johannesburg where this was quite extreme, where the couple really wanted a bespoke home that spoke to their values. It wasn't large, but it was bespoke and very sustainable. So we used rammed earth. The house, from a sustainability perspective, was facing north. There was a connection with the outside. So we're seeing that, and that then does link to sustainability. What I've seen in terms of sustainability is that while people don't know all the details, they are becoming more aware that their choices and their homes have an impact on the environment and their wallet. So people want a home that's not going to cost a fortune to cool or heat. They want finishes that have longevity. The more informed consumer is now even starting to ask about VOCs that are leaching out of the materials in their home. So there definitely is a shift towards sustainability. We're also seeing much more, I think, request for contemporary design. So contemporary design is very clean with modern lines. It's not themed. If we look at the homes, modernist homes that actually come from the period after the Second World War, they were very clean, square. They had a whole different construction system and large panes of glass. Now, those homes haven't really dated. Sure, the finishes might get updated, but those homes have remained more timeless. And I think we're seeing also a shift towards more timeless design. I think curves are also, making a comeback. We don't know if those are from the 70s but there definitely seems to be some curved lines within building design. Natural light. Natural light has always been important for South African homes. The only difference we're seeing now is that as we have the technology to do larger panes of glass, we really are facing less limitations in terms of what we can do there. Then another trend that we're seeing is connection and separation. So we are still doing a lot of open plan spaces, but at the same time, we're also very often designing more contained and cozy spaces. So those might happen in a pajama lounge, a reading nook. It might be an office. I think a TV lounge is often, much more contained space. Maybe even a home cinema, is taking that to the next level where it is a really separated and snug sort of space. I think another space that we're really seeing getting used a lot is bomas and external spaces. But I don't think our love of living outside is anything new, but in sort of recent, maybe year or two, we've really seen a lot more people asking for those sorts of spaces. Then another thing that we've picked up is flexible space. Flexible space is very useful. And, where we now after COVID, I know a lot of people are being forced to go back to work, but some people still have that flexibility. And so if you have that flexibility, you might need a space to work, but not everybody wants a dedicated home office. So we recently did a home where there had to be a work from home component, but at the same time, they needed a guest accommodation. And so the room had to cater to those functions at a minimum. And so we literally had Murphy beds that come out of the wall so that when it needs to be a guest accommodation, it is, but when it needs to be a home office, it is. So we're seeing a need for flexible spaces. And then from a materials perspective, we're seeing a lot of texture added to homes. So that texture is often added by adding cladding. And that cladding can be a multitude of things: stone, timber, steel sheeting, tiles. So we've really seen the adding of that texture on both the exterior and the interior of homes. And people are more open to that. And that's just because it adds warmth. Often those materials can add sound absorbing materials, and a lot of them are low maintenance. So we recently completed a project where the living room is a big shed that is just glass and steel, and the client wanted a durable floor, so they opted for a tiled floor, and we then suggested a timber ceiling. And they opted in for it because the timber ceiling just adds warmth to that space. It has acoustic properties, and it's a fairly good insulator. And the timber we used was pine from a sustainable source, so also much kinder to the environment than a polystyrene ceiling. So that's another move. We've seen lots of cladding all over the home. There's also a shift to natural materials, and I don't know if this comes post-COVID, where, again, we're aware of our space, the quality of our environment, and we're aware of our own health and wellness and what we put in our homes, how that affects it. So, we're seeing a lot of use of timber and other natural materials, expressing concrete. And then speaking about the bespoke elements of the design, this is also pulling through into finishes, where very often clients want to support local designers and artisans. So we're seeing that we're using handmade tiles, maybe bespoke lighting that's handmade. So we're seeing all of that come through. I do also think that these things are regional. I think that you will have differences in different locations depending on what people are exposed to. So as part of this question of how South African residential design is evolving or changing, we also got asked what makes South African homes unique and how do we approach design because of this. So one thing I can tell you that I've experienced, no matter the demographic of who I've worked with, we love the outdoors and we love to braai. So that space where we are braaiing is super important. For most of us, it's a covered patio. And I was looking back when I was preparing for this. I think in 13 years of practice, I've done one home that didn't have a covered outdoor patio. But that home was designed so that the entire living area, dining, lounge, kitchen, opened up and actually became the patio. And then they had this gorgeous, beautiful, massive tree in their garden. And we actually designed a sort of a boma or a fire space under the tree. So for South Africans, we love our braai and we love our connection to the outdoors. And what better way to achieve both of those than with a patio? So we love that connection to the outdoors. Our living spaces are often also connected to the outdoors. And we really want as much connection to the outdoors as possible. Now, again, I think it's important to mention there that this will play out differently depending on which region of South Africa you're in. I mean, we've got 13 climate zones. So here in the Highveld in Gauteng, we've really got a temperate climate for most of the year, where even in winter, if you're getting some sun into your patio, you can sit on an outdoor patio and not be cold. Okay, you maybe have a blanket and a jacket, but you can actually still enjoy some sunshine. Whereas potentially in the Western Cape, where they really have some wild weather from time to time, where it's raining, windy, and just like going berserk, you will still want your patio, but there very often we're looking at what we call a braai room, because that patio has the ability to close and respond to weather. Similarly, in warmer regions of our country, if we go up north where it's very arid and dry, your patio might be on the south side because it's just so hot that you actually need it to be on the cooler side of the house. Even in regions like KZN, there it's also going to be, there you might have fans on the patio. Because of the humidity, you need to move air, but still going to have that patio. We also love to swim. We love swimming pools. And the truth is that the creepy crawly is a South African invention. So that is how much we loved swimming, have always loved swimming pools. We actually invented the creepy crawly, or a way to keep them clean. So that is something that is often very important. And that will depend very much on the space we have available in the garden and the client's requirements. So we have some clients that would want their pool within proximity. Others, if they've got the space, actually would prefer it a little bit further away. I'm personally not a fan of a pool where if somebody jumps in and the water splashes the windows, I don't think a pool should be that close, but can be in proximity. But that's very much client driven, but we love our swimming pools. The other thing is we also love our cars, and we want garages. So we often have a space dedicated to our cars, which I don't think is the case worldwide. And then I think the last thing that affects a lot how we design is safety and security. So in terms of residential design, I think the gated estate has a lot of popularity because it offers us that layer of security. But even within gated estates, we are still having to consider security. Very often that means that the bedroom wing or the first floor has a security barrier. It might also mean that we have shutters that can double up. We're currently busy with a project out on a farm, on a game farm, and there all door openings have shutters. It's just because we have to have that extra layer of security. So those are the things that we've seen, how South African design is changing, and we're very excited by some of it. In terms of the things that we've seen across the board, we've mentioned them. So that's our 2 cents on how we see South African design changing, and the things that make our South African homes unique.